Imagine waking up one morning to find your entire fortune has vanished into thin air, not because of a stock market crash or a bad business deal, but because the digital art you invested in, the one you were told would revolutionize creativity, is suddenly worthless, and the creators have disappeared without a trace. This isn't science fiction. This is the reality of art NFT investment scandals, a breathtakingly modern twist on financial deception that echoes some of the most infamous schemes of the Gilded Age. In an era where technology promised transparency and empowerment, we're instead witnessing a digital gold rush where fortunes are made and lost in seconds, built on little more than hype, hope, and hollow promises. There's something eerily familiar about these stories. They mirror the financial dramas of the late 19th century, when industrial titans and cunning schemers exploited new technologies and unregulated markets to amass unimaginable wealth, often at the expense of ordinary people. Then it was railroads, oil, and speculative stocks. Today, it's non-fungible tokens, blockchain, and digital ownership. The players have changed, but the game remains strikingly similar: ambition, innovation, and too often, exploitation. It's a cautionary tale that spans centuries, reminding us that human nature doesn't evolve as quickly as technology does. So what drives people to pour their life savings into pixels and promises? And how did the world of art NFTs, once hailed as a revolutionary force for artists and collectors alike, become a playground for opportunists and fraudsters? In this video, we're going to pull back the curtain on these modern-day financial dramas, exploring the stunning parallels between today's digital investment scandals and the outrageous schemes of the Gilded Age. You'll discover how charisma, technology, and the timeless allure of easy money continue to seduce investors, and why these stories matter not just as warnings, but as reflections of our own desires and vulnerabilities. Stick with us. This is a journey into the heart of ambition, innovation, and illusion, and it's one you won't want to miss. But to understand how these modern scandals unfolded, we first need to step back to the beginning, to that moment of pure, unadulterated possibility. The rise of NFTs felt less like a market trend and more like a cultural earthquake. For artists, it was a beacon of hope, a direct line to a global audience without the gatekeepers of galleries or auction houses. For collectors, it was a thrilling new frontier, a chance to own a verifiable piece of digital history. And for speculators, it was a digital gold rush, echoing the frenzied energy of the California 49ers or the dot-com boom of the late 1990s. The promise was intoxicating: a decentralized, democratized art world built on the unchangeable ledger of blockchain technology. At its core, this new system relied on a simple yet revolutionary concept. Think of blockchain as a public, digital record book that everyone can see but no single person can alter. Every transaction, every sale, every transfer of ownership is permanently inscribed on this chain for all to verify. An NFT, or non-fungible token, is essentially a unique certificate of ownership tied to a specific digital file, a piece of art, a music track, a video clip. This certificate lives on the blockchain, providing proof that you, and only you, own that particular one-of-a-kind digital asset. It was a solution to a problem the internet never knew how to solve: how to create digital scarcity and true ownership in a world of infinite, perfect copies. This technological breakthrough ignited a firestorm of excitement. Suddenly, digital artists who had struggled for years to monetize their work were selling pieces for life-changing sums. A collage by the artist Beeple sold at Christie's auction house for a staggering $69 million. A pixelated cartoon CryptoPunk avatar could command hundreds of thousands. Twitter profiles were adorned with cartoon apes from the Bored Ape Yacht Club, signaling membership in an exclusive and seemingly lucrative digital tribe. It wasn't just about the art. It was about the status, the community, and the intoxicating belief that you were getting in on the ground floor of the next big thing. And just like in any gold rush, the environment was ripe for both incredible innovation and profound exploitation. The sheer speed and novelty of it all created a perfect storm. Many investors, swept up in the hype, didn't fully grasp what they were buying. They were purchasing the token, the certificate of ownership, not necessarily the copyright to the underlying image, which often remained with the artist. The market valuation was driven almost entirely by perception and community belief, making it incredibly volatile. This combination of complex technology, rapid wealth creation, and widespread confusion is a classic recipe for a mania, mirroring historical bubbles from tulips in 17th century Holland to real estate in the mid-2000s. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the potential for both triumph and tragedy had never been greater. What made this digital gold rush so irresistible to so many? The answer lies in a powerful cocktail of psychology, technology, and social influence, a mix that has fueled speculative manias for centuries. At its heart was a profound and very human emotion, the fear of missing out, or FOMO. Social media platforms became roaring engines for this anxiety, constantly flashing images of life-changing profits. You'd see a friend or a friend of a friend post a screenshot of a cartoon animal they bought for a few $100s, now valued at over $100,000. These stories weren't just anecdotes. They were advertisements for a new American dream, one where financial freedom was just one clever digital purchase away. It created a frantic, can't-lose atmosphere where hesitation felt like a guaranteed loss, pushing people to invest before they even fully understood what an NFT was. This psychological pull was supercharged by a noble and enticing promise: the democratization of art. For decades, the traditional art world was seen as an exclusive club, a playground for the ultra-wealthy with impenetrable gatekeepers. NFTs appeared to smash those gates to pieces. Suddenly, anyone with an internet connection could become a patron of the arts, directly supporting creators they believed in. It wasn't just about investing. It was about being part of a cultural movement, a community that valued digital creativity in a way the old guard never had. This sense of purpose and belonging made investing feel righteous, turning financial speculation into a form of social activism. People weren't just buying pixels. They were buying a piece of a revolution, and that emotional investment was often as powerful as the financial one. Adding jet fuel to this fire was the overwhelming influence of celebrity endorsements. When A-list actors, chart-topping musicians, and superstar athletes began proudly displaying their own NFT purchases, it bestowed an instant layer of legitimacy and glamour onto the entire space. It wasn't just tech-savvy early adopters anymore. It was your favorite cultural icons, seemingly validating the entire market with their endorsement. This created a powerful and often dangerously misleading halo effect. Fans trusted these celebrities, assuming they had done the due diligence that the average person might skip in their rush to participate. In reality, many of these stars were being paid hefty sums for their promotions, a critical detail often buried in the fine print. Their involvement was less an endorsement of the technology and more a lucrative business deal, blurring the lines between genuine belief and paid advertisement, and leaving their followers to navigate the risks alone. Yet for all its revolutionary promise, this new digital frontier was not immune to the oldest vice in finance, the abuse of privileged information. The first cracks in this gleaming facade appeared not in some shadowy corner of the internet, but at the very heart of the ecosystem, involving one of the most prestigious and recognizable NFT collections in the world. The Bored Ape Yacht Club was more than just a set of 10,000 algorithmically generated ape portraits. It was a status symbol, a multi-billion-dollar brand, and for many, a golden ticket into an exclusive digital country club. So when allegations surfaced that an executive at OpenSea, the very marketplace where these digital assets traded, was exploiting his position for personal gain, it sent shockwaves through the entire community, shattering the illusion of a decentralized utopia built on fairness. The case centered on a former OpenSea product manager named Nathaniel Chastain. His role placed him at the critical junction where new projects and featured promotions were decided, giving him a clear, advanced view of which NFTs were about to receive a massive, market-moving spotlight on the platform's coveted homepage. This was the equivalent of having a crystal ball. The OpenSea homepage functioned as a powerful engine of validation and demand. Being featured, there could instantly multiply an item's value overnight. Prosecutors alleged that Chastain, armed with this confidential roadmap, engaged in a sophisticated form of digital front-running. He would secretly purchase dozens of precisely those NFTs he knew were scheduled to be promoted, using anonymous cryptocurrency wallets and accounts to conceal his identity. Once the official announcement was made and the ensuing buying frenzy drove prices up, he would swiftly sell his holdings, pocketing the profit. This scheme was a brutal betrayal of the core principles that the entire NFT space claimed to uphold: transparency and a level playing field. While everyday investors were making bets based on public information and community sentiment, an insider was quietly rigging the game, turning the marketplace's own promotional power into his personal piggy bank. The case became a landmark moment, not just for the dollar amounts involved, but for its powerful symbolism. It was the first major federal criminal prosecution specifically targeting insider trading in the NFT world, with the Department of Justice making it clear that this new asset class would be subject to the same old rules. Chastain was ultimately convicted on charges of wire fraud and money laundering, a verdict that sent an unmistakable message that the Wild West days of digital assets were coming to an end. The fallout was profound, creating a crisis of confidence that extended far beyond a single bad actor. For many investors, the scandal was a cold bucket of water, a stark reminder that the trappings of Web3 innovation, the cool artwork, the empowering rhetoric, the celebrity buzz could easily mask very traditional forms of corruption. If you couldn't trust the executives at the largest and most trusted marketplace, who could you trust? The scandal exposed a critical vulnerability. The technology could verify ownership on an immutable blockchain, but it could not verify the intentions or ethics of the people building on top of it. This fundamental flaw, the human element, echoed the exploitative practices of Gilded Age robber barons who used their insider knowledge of railroad routes or stock offerings to manipulate markets and amass fortunes at the expense of everyone else. The legal repercussions for Nathaniel Chastain were swift and severe, marking a pivotal moment in the attempt to impose real-world order on the digital frontier. His conviction wasn't just a simple slap on the wrist. It was a landmark federal case that sent a clear, chilling message to the entire crypto art world. He was found guilty on one count of wire fraud and one count of money laundering, crimes that each carry a potential prison sentence of up to 20 years. This was the Department of Justice drawing a very firm line in the sand, asserting that the old rules of finance absolutely applied to these new digital assets. The prosecution successfully argued that the confidential information about upcoming NFT features was the property of OpenSea, and by misappropriating it for his own secret gain, Chastain had committed a fraud not unlike a traditional corporate insider trading on non-public stock tips. The case established a crucial legal precedent, effectively declaring that the Wild West of NFT trading would be subject to the long arm of established financial law. In the wake of the scandal and the very public trial, OpenSea was forced into swift damage control. The company publicly accepted Chastain's resignation and issued statements reaffirming its commitment to integrity, but the trust had already been deeply fractured. Almost immediately, a class action lawsuit was filed against the marketplace by a group of furious investors. Their argument was simple yet devastating. OpenSea, as the leading platform, had a fundamental duty to protect its users and maintain a fair marketplace. By failing to properly oversee its own executive or implement safeguards to prevent such blatant insider trading, the company had breached that duty and caused significant financial harm to those who had traded on what they believed was a level playing field. This lawsuit sought not only financial damages, but also court-ordered changes to OpenSea's internal policies, aiming to force the kind of transparency the platform had always claimed to champion. The broader impact on the NFT community was a profound and palpable loss of innocence. For many early adopters, the entire appeal of Web3 was its promise of a decentralized, trustless system, a place where code was law and intermediaries could be eliminated. The OpenSea scandal revealed the painful flaw in that ideal. While the blockchain itself might be trustless, the platforms and people built on top of it were not. A single individual, armed with nothing more than confidential information and a few anonymous wallets, could manipulate the market as effectively as any Gilded Age stock manipulator with a private telegraph wire. The scandal forced a collective reckoning, a realization that the revolutionary new world still operated with very old, very human vulnerabilities. The community's faith wasn't just shaken in OpenSea. It was shaken in the very premise that this new ecosystem was inherently more ethical or immune to the corrupting influence of greed. The digital gold rush suddenly felt a lot more like the old-fashioned kind, complete with claim jumpers and rigged scales. If the OpenSea scandal was a betrayal by an insider, the next major shock to the system was a far more brazen and brutal heist. It involved a project called Evolved Apes, and it demonstrated that while insider trading exploited the system, an outright rug pull could simply dismantle it entirely. This scheme was less a sophisticated manipulation of the market and more a digital smash and grab, proving that the anonymity celebrated in the crypto world could also be its greatest vulnerability. The project launched with a familiar and exciting pitch: 10,000 unique NFT ape characters that would be part of an upcoming fighting game. Investors weren't just buying artwork, they were buying a ticket into an entire ecosystem, a promise of future entertainment and community built around their digital assets. The anonymous individual behind it all operated under the fittingly ominous username Evil Ape. He presented a roadmap filled with enticing milestones: the development of the Evolved Apes fighting game, where owners could pit their unique NFTs against each other, merchandise, and ambitious marketing plans. The community, eager and trusting, poured their money in, rallying around the project's potential. The fundraising was a resounding success, generating approximately $2.7 million in Ethereum from thousands of hopeful investors. For a brief moment, everything seemed to be on track. The Discord community was buzzing with excitement, artwork was revealed, and the future looked bright. Then, with breathtaking speed, it all went dark. Almost immediately after the funds were collected from the final NFT sale, Evil Ape vanished. The project's website, evolvedapes.com, went offline. The official Twitter account fell silent. Most crucially, the Discord server, the vibrant heart of the community, was suddenly deleted, erasing all communication and leaving investors in a state of confused panic. The promised fighting game was, of course, nowhere to be seen. It had never existed beyond a few concept images. The $2.7 million, which was supposed to fund game development, marketing, and project rewards, had been drained from the project's wallet and funneled into Evil Ape's private account. The investors were left holding JPEG that were now functionally worthless, their value evaporating the moment the creator decided to cut and run. This exit scam, known in the crypto world as a rug pull, is devastatingly simple in its execution. A creator launches a project, builds up immense hype and financial investment based on promised future utility, and then absconds with all the capital once the sales conclude, abandoning the project and the community entirely. The Evolved Apes rug pull was a textbook case, and its success hinged entirely on the cloak of anonymity provided by the internet. Evil Ape's identity was hidden, his location unknown, and the decentralized, pseudonymous nature of cryptocurrency transactions made the stolen funds nearly impossible to trace or recover for the average person. It was a perfect crime for the digital age, leaving victims with no one to hold accountable and no clear path for legal recourse. The aftermath was a stark lesson in the risks of trusting anonymous creators with large sums of money. The digital artworks, now orphaned from their promised ecosystem, lost all their speculative value almost instantly. The community of investors, however, did not simply dissolve. In a remarkable display of resilience, some members banded together to form a Saved Apes community, attempting to salvage something from the wreckage and support each other. But financially, the damage was done. The incident became a cautionary tale cited across the industry. a glaring example of how the very lack of regulation that attracted many to the NFT space also made it a fertile ground for this kind of blatant, unpunishable theft. It was a harsh reminder that in a world built on trustless systems, sometimes the only thing you really need to trust is the honesty of a complete stranger hiding behind a cartoon avatar. The Evolved Apes scandal was far from an isolated incident. In fact, it followed a well-worn playbook that has become terrifyingly common in the digital asset space. These rug pulls, as they're known, are not acts of spontaneous chaos, but carefully orchestrated deceptions designed to exploit hope and community spirit for pure financial gain. The first and most crucial step for any fraudulent project is building a facade of legitimacy, and this almost always begins with a fabricated team. Potential investors are greeted with a sleek website featuring professional headshots and impressive, fictional bios of developers, marketers, and community managers. These profiles are often stock photos or AI-generated images, paired with stolen LinkedIn credentials or entirely invented career histories. This creates an illusion of a capable docs team, meaning their real-world identities are supposedly known, which makes the project feel safer and more credible, even when every single detail is a lie. Once the fake team is in place, the next essential ingredient is the roadmap. This document is the heart of the sales pitch, a glittering promise of a future filled with utility and excitement. For Evolved Apes, it was the fighting game. For other projects, it might be metaverse integrations, physical merchandise, charity donations, or token airdrops. These roadmaps are masterclasses in vague but ambitious language, filled with buzzwords like utility, phased rollout, and community rewards that sound impressive but commit to very little concrete action. The goal is to create a compelling narrative that transforms a simple JPEG from a piece of art into a ticket for a future experience, justifying a higher price tag and building emotional investment. Investors aren't just buying what exists, they're buying a dream of what could exist, and that dream is far more valuable and easier to sell than reality. The entire operation is fueled by a relentless and calculated hype machine. Before the public sale even begins, the anonymous founders use social media, particularly Twitter and Discord, to create an aura of inevitability around their project. They might pay influencers to subtly promote it, run fake giveaway competitions to inflate their follower counts, and use multiple accounts to simulate a bustling, excited community in their Discord channels. This manufactured buzz triggers a powerful fear of missing out, pressuring people to buy in during the frenzied minting phase without conducting any real due diligence. The pressure is intentional. The founders know that in the heat of the moment, few will pause to ask why the doxed team has no verifiable social media history outside the project, or why the ambitious roadmap lacks any technical specifics or named partners. Then comes the exit. The mechanics of the theft itself are often breathtakingly simple, thanks to the very technology that powers NFTs. When a project sets up its smart contract, the self-executing code that governs the minting and sales, the founders typically control a treasury wallet where all the revenue from NFT sales is collected. This wallet is supposed to hold the funds for future development, as promised in the roadmap. In a rug pull, the founder simply transfers the entire contents of this communal treasury into their own private wallet and severs all connections. They abandon the website, delete the Discord server, and vanish from social media, all within minutes. The blockchain records the transaction for all to see, a permanent, immutable testament to the theft, but it only shows the movement of digital tokens to an anonymous address, a string of letters and numbers that is virtually untraceable to a real person without extensive, costly forensic investigation. This is the ultimate shield for these digital con artists, the paradox of transparent anonymity. Every transaction they make is publicly visible and permanently recorded on the blockchain, yet their real-world identity remains completely hidden. They operate under pseudonyms, use encrypted communication, and funnel the stolen cryptocurrency through mixing services or foreign exchanges designed to obfuscate the money trail. For the average investor who has lost their savings, pursuing legal action is a daunting, expensive, and often futile endeavor. You can't serve a lawsuit to a username, and most local law enforcement agencies lack the specialized resources to track stolen crypto across international borders. This combination of technological complexity and legal ambiguity creates a nearly perfect environment for fraud, allowing bad actors to exploit the system's freedoms without facing any of its consequences, leaving a trail of broken promises and financial ruin in their wake. Just when the community thought it had witnessed the height of audacity with anonymous avatars and abandoned apes, along came a scheme that was almost brazen in its thematic irony. The Frosties project presented itself as a charming, lighthearted collection of ice cream-themed characters, a seemingly innocent and fun entry into the NFT world. Its artwork featured cheerful, cartoonish desserts with friendly smiles, a far cry from the edgy, brooding apes that had dominated the market. This deliberate, wholesome branding was a strategic masterstroke in deception, designed to appear less threatening and more accessible, luring in a demographic of investors who might have been wary of more aggressively hyped projects. It was a classic wolf in sheep's clothing, or perhaps more fittingly, a con artist in an ice cream vendor's uniform. The founders, operating under the pseudonyms Jake58 and Jared58, crafted an elaborate and enticing promise to build trust. Their roadmap wasn't just a vague set of goals. It was a detailed menu of future delights. They explicitly promised that a portion of the proceeds would fund the development of an entire Frosties verse, a metaverse game where owners could use their NFTs as playable characters. Beyond the digital world, they committed to launching a line of physical merchandise and even donated a percentage of sales to charity. This multi-layered utility, gaming, tangible products, and philanthropy, made the investment seem responsible, ethical, and built for long-term growth. It wasn't just another speculative asset. It was a brand in the making, and investors were invited to become founding members of this sweet new empire. The minting event in January 2022 was a resounding success, a testament to the powerful allure of this carefully constructed narrative. Thousands of investors, disarmed by the friendly aesthetic and convinced by the robust roadmap, eagerly purchased the Frosties NFTs. In a matter of hours, the project raised a staggering $1.3 million in Ethereum. The community celebrated in the project's Discord server, sharing their new digital treats and excitedly discussing the future of the Frosties verse. The mood was one of triumph and anticipation, Then, without a single warning, the entire dream was unplugged. The Discord server vanished into thin air. The official Twitter account went dark. The founders, Jake and Jared, along with the entire $1.3 million, disappeared completely. The aftermath was a chilling silence, broken only by the confused and angry voices of investors left out in the cold. They were left holding nothing but digital images of melting ice cream cones, a bitterly poetic representation of their evaporated savings. The promised game, the merchandise, the charitable donations. None of it had ever been more than a fantasy used to separate people from their money. The sheer speed and efficiency of the rug pull indicated it had been the plan all along. A premeditated act of theft disguised as a creative enterprise. The Frosty scandal demonstrated that fraudsters were becoming more sophisticated, not in their technology, but in their psychological manipulation. They had learned that the best way to build trust was to promise a community and a future, because that was exactly what people were most hungry to buy. What made the Frosties' case uniquely significant, however, wasn't just the theft. It was what happened next. Unlike the anonymous, evil ape, the individuals behind Frosties were not content with one successful heist. Emboldened by their easy victory and the anonymity they believed would protect them, they attempted to do it all over again just a few months later. Under new pseudonyms, they launched an almost identical project called Embers. The playbook was the same: cute artwork, an ambitious roadmap filled with metaverse and merchandise promises, and a fresh Discord server buzzing with manufactured hype. This audacious repeat performance was their ultimate undoing. It provided a clear pattern for investigators to follow and revealed a level of greed that made them vulnerable. The law enforcement agencies that had been largely absent in previous scams now had a visible, active target. The subsequent investigation and arrest became a watershed moment for NFT accountability. In a first-of-its-kind action, the two 24-year-old men behind the pseudonyms Ethan Nguyen and Andre Lacuna were tracked down and charged with wire fraud and money laundering by the Department of Justice. Their arrest sent an electric shock through the entire digital art world. It proved that the cloak of online anonymity was not impenetrable. Through blockchain analysis and traditional investigative work, authorities were able to pierce the digital veil, connect the cryptocurrency transactions to real-world identities, and make arrests. The charges carried a maximum sentence of 20 years each, a sobering reminder that the consequences for digital fraud could be very, very real. The Frosties case, which began as a story of simple deception, evolved into a powerful new precedent, demonstrating that the era of consequence-free rug pulls might finally be coming to an end. The arrest of Ethan Nguyen and Andre Lacuna, the two men behind the Frosties scam, was a stunning development that no one in the NFT community saw coming. For months, the prevailing sentiment had been one of helplessness. If a creator using a pseudonym decided to run off with the funds, there was simply nothing to be done. The decentralized and anonymous nature of it all was seen as an impenetrable shield for fraudsters. But in March 2022, that assumption was shattered. Federal agents from the Internal Revenue Service's Criminal Investigation Division, working with the Department of Justice, tracked down the two 24-year-olds in Los Angeles and took them into custody. The charges were severe: one count of wire fraud and one count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, each carrying a maximum prison sentence of 20 years. This wasn't a minor slap on the wrist or a civil lawsuit from a private party. This was the full weight of the United States federal government coming down on an NFT scheme for the very first time. The criminal complaint laid out a meticulous case, piecing together their digital trail. Investigators used blockchain analysis to follow the movement of the $1.3 million in stolen Ethereum from the Frosties project wallet. They were able to link those transactions to accounts on centralized cryptocurrency exchanges, which are required by law to collect real-world identity information from their users, known as Know Your Customer, or KYC data. This crucial step pierced the veil of their online pseudonyms, connecting Jake58 and Jared58 to the real individuals, Nguyen and Lacuna. Their alleged attempt to launch a second, nearly identical scam called Embers provided further evidence of their intent, painting a picture of calculated, repeated deception rather than a failed project. The implications of this arrest sent a seismic wave through the entire digital art and crypto world. It established a powerful and unambiguous legal precedent. The Department of Justice was making a definitive statement. Non-fungible tokens are considered legal property under U.S. law, and defrauding investors of that property constitutes a serious federal crime. This moved the entire NFT market out of a perceived legal gray area and into the established framework of financial regulation. Investors, for the first time, felt a glimmer of hope that there could be real-world consequences for these digital thefts. For creators and project founders, it served as a stark warning that the anonymity of the internet was not a guarantee of immunity. Federal agencies had now proven they had the tools, the will, and the legal authority to pursue these cases. The Frosties prosecution became a landmark case, a reference point that would be cited in every subsequent discussion about NFT regulation and enforcement. It signaled the end of the absolute Wild West era and the beginning of a new phase of scrutiny and accountability. While the decentralized ethos of blockchain technology aimed to reduce the need for trusted intermediaries, this case reaffirmed that when it comes to prosecuting outright fraud, the ultimate backstop would always be the traditional legal system. It was a classic example of history repeating itself. Just as the unregulated excesses of the Gilded Age eventually led to the creation of the Securities and Exchange Commission and robust financial laws, the rampant fraud in the early days of NFTs was now forcing the existing legal system to adapt, evolve, and lay down the law in a new digital frontier. While the Frosties case showed us anonymous scammers getting their due, the next major scandal proved that you don't need to hide behind a pseudonym to exploit the market. Sometimes, a famous face is the perfect shield. This brings us to the controversial story of Milo Universe, an NFT project launched by NBA sensation LaMelo Ball. Unlike the shadowy figures behind Evolved Apes or Frosties, Ball was a globally recognized celebrity, a rising star in professional basketball with a massive and devoted fan base. His foray into the NFT world was met with tremendous excitement. For his fans, it wasn't just an investment opportunity. It was a chance to own a piece of their idol's brand, to get closer to the athlete they admired. This project seemed to have it all: star power, a built-in community, and the glossy presentation of a major venture. The LaMelo Universe collection itself was a series of digital cartoon avatars, each embodying a different aspect of LaMelo Ball's personality and style. The marketing promised an exclusive ecosystem, a digital clubhouse where holders would get access to unique experiences, future merchandise drops, and other perks tied directly to the Ball brand. The initial mint was a roaring success, fueled by the intense loyalty of Ball's fans and the general public's belief that a celebrity-backed project would be a safer, more legitimate bet than an anonymous startup. People weren't just buying the artwork. They were buying into the aura of LaMelo Ball himself, trusting that his reputation was on the line and that he would ensure the project's success. This blind faith in a celebrity endorsement became the project's most valuable asset and ultimately its greatest vulnerability. The trouble began not long after the initial sales were completed. Sharp-eyed investors and blockchain analysts started noticing strange and highly suspicious trading patterns. Large quantities of the LaMelo Universe NFTs were being bought and sold in rapid succession between a small cluster of anonymous cryptocurrency wallets. This activity, known as wash trading, creates a false impression of furious market demand and rapidly rising prices. It's a classic pump and dump maneuver, artificial inflation followed by a coordinated sell-off. The allegations were that individuals closely tied to the project's inner circle were behind these wallets, secretly manipulating the market to make the collection appear far more valuable and liquid than it actually was, enticing genuine fans to buy in at these artificially high prices. Then the dump happened. Once the manipulated trading had successfully pumped up the floor price, the cheapest available NFT in the collection, the same anonymous wallets began offloading their entire holdings all at once. This massive, coordinated sell-off flooded the market with supply, causing the price to crater almost instantly. Fans and investors who had bought in during the hype, often at the peak of the artificially inflated prices, watched in horror as the value of their assets evaporated overnight. They were left holding NFTs that were now worth a fraction of what they had paid, while the individuals behind the wash trading wallets walked away with substantial profits. The very team that was supposed to be building long-term value for the community had, according to the accusations, treated their supporters' investment as a short-term vehicle for their own enrichment. The public outcry was immediate and fierce. The community felt a profound sense of betrayal. This wasn't a faceless scammer. This was their hero's project. The controversy centered on a critical question. What did LaMelo Ball himself know? Was he an active participant in this scheme, or was he merely a careless figurehead whose name and image were used by a savvy marketing team to execute a cynical cash grab? While Ball never faced any formal legal charges, the scandal severely damaged his reputation and trust with his fan base. It became a powerful case study in the dangers of celebrity-led NFT projects, where the star's involvement is often little more than a licensing deal, granting their name and likeness in exchange for a fee, with little to no oversight or genuine commitment to the project's promised utility or the community's financial well-being. The fallout from the LaMelo Universe saga sent a different kind of shockwave through the space than the Frosties' arrest. It wasn't about anonymous fraud, but about the ethics of influence and the responsibility that comes with a platform. It highlighted a new, modern form of exploitation, where the trust between a celebrity and their fans could be monetized and manipulated with devastating financial consequences. For the NFT community, it was a harsh lesson in doing their own research, looking beyond the glamorous surface of a project to scrutinize the utility, the team's transparency, and the actual mechanics of the tokenomics. A famous face, it turned out, was not a guarantee of legitimacy sometimes. It was just the most effective distraction. The Milo Universe controversy forces us to confront a much larger and more systemic issue within the digital asset world: the immense and often unexamined power of the celebrity endorsement. When a famous athlete, musician, or actor attaches their name to a project, they are not just lending their image. They are transferring a portion of the deep, personal trust they have built with their audience over years. For a fan, that trust is a powerful shortcut through the normally tedious process of due diligence. Why spend hours researching smart contract audits, tokenomics, and team backgrounds when your idol seems to be giving it their personal seal of approval? This psychological leap of faith is exactly what makes these partnerships so effective and so dangerously susceptible to exploitation. This dynamic creates a significant ethical imbalance. The celebrity typically receives a substantial upfront payment or a generous percentage of the sales, a financial arrangement that is frequently disclosed in murky legal language or buried deep within a project's terms of service. For them, the risk is primarily to their reputation. For the average investor, however, the risk is entirely financial: their actual savings and disposable income. The celebrity gets paid whether the project succeeds or fails, whether the roadmap is delivered or abandoned. The investor's return, on the other hand, is entirely dependent on the project's long-term viability and the integrity of the team executing the vision. This misalignment of incentives places all the financial burden on the community while offering the famous endorser a largely risk-free payday. The problem is compounded by a pervasive lack of transparency regarding the actual extent of the celebrity's involvement. In the vast majority of cases, the star is not a founder, a developer, or an active manager. Their role is often limited to a licensing agreement. They grant permission for the project to use their name and likeness in exchange for a fee. They may make a few social media posts as contracted, but they have no real oversight into the project's operations, finances, or technical execution. Fans, however, naturally assume a deeper level of commitment. They believe the celebrity is curating the project, vetting the team, and has a genuine stake in its success. This assumption, however understandable, is rarely based in reality, creating a vast gulf between perception and the often disappointing truth. This phenomenon isn't entirely new. It echoes the long history of celebrity endorsements for everything from sneakers to soft drinks. But the stakes in the NFT world are fundamentally different. Buying a pair of shoes endorsed by a basketball player gives you a tangible product of known value. Investing in a celebrity NFT based on that same endorsement is a speculative bet on an unregulated digital asset whose value is almost entirely dictated by perception and promise. The celebrity's influence is being used not to sell a finished product, but to sell a vision of a future that may never materialize. This places a heavy and often ignored ethical responsibility on the shoulders of the famous individual to truly understand what they are promoting and to clearly communicate the limits of their own role. The aftermath of these failed celebrity projects leaves a unique kind of damage in its wake. Beyond the financial loss, there is a deep sense of personal betrayal that doesn't exist with an anonymous rug pull. When an evil ape disappears, investors are angry at a faceless villain. When a project tied to a beloved public figure collapses, the disappointment is directed at someone they admired and felt a connection to. This erosion of fan trust can have long-lasting repercussions for the celebrity's brand, but it also creates a broader culture of cynicism that hurts legitimate artists and builders in the space. It teaches investors to be wary of all projects, making it harder for those with genuine intent to build and succeed. The lesson from the Milo Universe saga is clear. In the rush to monetize fame, celebrities must remember that their most valuable asset is not their name, but the trust they hold with the people who support them. A trust that, once broken, is incredibly difficult to earn back. Yet for all the financial deception we've seen, perhaps the most insidious scandal to emerge from the NFT space strikes at the very heart of its stated purpose: the celebration and support of artistic creativity. This is the story of the plagiarism epidemic, a widespread issue where originality was sacrificed for profit, and where anonymous opportunists systematically looted the portfolios of independent digital artists. While countless projects engaged in this practice, one of the most high-profile and egregious cases involved a collection known as Squiggles, which laid bare a deeply troubling disrespect for the very creators the NFT revolution claimed to empower. The original Squiggles concept itself was not inherently malicious. It was a simple, generative art style based on colorful, looping lines. The scandal erupted when sharp-eyed members of the online art community began noticing something deeply disturbing. Dozens of the NFTs being sold under this and similar names were not original generative creations at all. They were direct, pixel-for-pixel copies of existing artwork, lifted without permission from the digital portfolios of artists on platforms like DeviantArt, ArtStation, and Instagram. These were not homages or inspired derivatives. They were outright theft. The anonymous creators behind these plagiarized collections had simply trawled the internet for compelling digital art, saved the image files, minted them as their own unique NFTs, and put them up for sale, often for thousands of dollars. The impact on the original artists was both financial and deeply personal. Many discovered their stolen work purely by accident, stumbling upon it on a marketplace or being alerted by their followers. For these artists, their online portfolio is their livelihood and their life's work, a carefully curated collection of their skill and imagination. To see it snatched away, stripped of their name, and monetized by a stranger was a profound violation. Beyond the lost potential income from a sale they never authorized, the act severed the fundamental connection between the creator and their creation. Their art, something deeply personal, was reduced to an anonymous, fungible commodity in a speculative game they never chose to play. The mechanics of this theft were brazenly simple, exploiting the very openness of the internet that artists rely on to share their work. The plagiarists used automated scripts and bots to scrape image-sharing websites, downloading thousands of pieces of art. They would then use these images as the visual assets for their NFT collections, writing a simple smart contract to mint them on a blockchain like Ethereum or Solana. The entire process, from theft to sale, could be executed in a matter of days with minimal technical skill or cost, creating a low-risk, high-reward factory for artistic fraud. The anonymity provided by crypto wallets allowed them to operate with impunity, creating a frustrating whack-a-mole situation where an artist could get one stolen collection taken down, only for another to pop up under a different name hours later. The Squiggles case became a flashpoint for the community's outrage because it so perfectly symbolized the betrayal of the NFT world's original ideals. This was not a complex financial rug pull or an insider trading scheme. It was a simple, old-fashioned art heist dressed in new technological clothing. The revolution that promised to cut out the middlemen and gatekeepers of the traditional art world had instead created a system where middlemen were replaced by faceless pirates who contributed nothing but theft. It forced a painful reckoning. A technology built on the principle of verifiable ownership was being used to facilitate the mass violation of intellectual property rights on an unprecedented scale. In response, a wave of backlash and citizen-led activism emerged. Artist unions and online communities like the Deviant Art Protect team organized to fight back, employing reverse image search technology and automated scanning tools to proactively identify stolen artwork across various NFT marketplaces. They would then report the infringing collections on mass petitioning platforms to delist them. While these efforts met with some success, the process was endlessly frustrating for artists, placing the burden of enforcement on the victims rather than the platforms profiting from the sales. The Squiggles scandal and others like it revealed a critical flaw in the decentralized dream. Without centralized gatekeepers, the responsibility for policing copyright infringement fell to a chaotic and inefficient system of self-policing, leaving individual creators to defend their own work in a vast and often hostile digital frontier. This systemic chaos stems from a fundamental conflict between the ideals of decentralization and the practical realities of intellectual property law. Blockchain technology is designed to be borderless and permissionless, operating on a global scale without a central authority. Copyright law, by contrast, is intensely territorial, rooted in the national laws of individual countries and enforced by their court systems. When an artist in Japan discovers their work stolen and minted by an anonymous individual using a server in Sweden, with the NFTs sold on a marketplace based in the United States to collectors living in Brazil and Germany, the legal jurisdiction becomes a dizzying, expensive nightmare to untangle. Which country's laws apply, which court has authority, who is even legally responsible? This jurisdictional puzzle often has no clear answer, making formal legal action a prohibitively complex and costly endeavor for an individual creator. The very feature that gives blockchain its power, the immutability of its ledger, also creates a unique form of frustration for victims of theft. Once a stolen image is minted into an NFT and a transaction occurs, that record is permanent and unchangeable. While a marketplace might eventually be persuaded to delist the infringing item, the token itself and the record of its sale continue to exist forever on the blockchain, a permanent monument to the theft. There is no digital undo button. This creates a surreal situation where an artist can have their copyrighted work verified as stolen property on an immutable public ledger, a contradiction that highlights the clash between a system built for trustless transactions and one built on trusting the creator's claim to originality. Compounding the problem is the ambiguous legal responsibility of the marketplaces themselves. Platforms like OpenSea and Rarible often position themselves as neutral facilitators, akin to a digital town square, rather than active publishers or curators. They argue that their role is to provide the infrastructure for peer-to-peer transactions, not to vet the authenticity of every single item listed by millions of users. This allows them to sidestep the kind of liability that a traditional gallery or auction house would face for selling a forged painting. Their terms of service typically place the burden of copyright verification squarely on the seller, shielding the platform from direct responsibility when that verification fails or is ignored entirely. While most have implemented reporting and takedown procedures similar to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act's DMCA system, the process is often slow, cumbersome, and reactive, leaving stolen art available for purchase for days or weeks, while the report wends its way through a moderation queue. For the original artists, the path to recourse is steep and demoralizing. The first step usually involves filing a DMCA takedown notice with the marketplace, a legal process that requires specific personal information and a formal declaration under penalty of perjury. For many artists, especially those outside the United States, this American legal framework is unfamiliar and intimidating. Even if successful, a takedown only removes the listing from that specific marketplace. The same stolen artwork can be, and often is, almost instantly minted again on a different, smaller platform with more lax moderation. To pursue the thief for damages, an artist would need to file a lawsuit, a process that requires first unmasking the anonymous wallet holder through a costly and time-intensive legal procedure known as subpoenaing the cryptocurrency exchanges linked to the wallet. The financial and emotional cost of this fight almost always far exceeds any potential reward, effectively granting plagiarists immunity and forcing artists into the exhausting role of full-time copyright guardians for their own digital portfolios. Yet even the most cynical observers of the NFT space were left stunned by the sheer scale and audacity of the AnubisDAO heist, a scheme that redefined the potential for catastrophic loss in the blink of an eye. Unlike the rug pulls that came before it, this was not a project built on cute cartoons or celebrity hype. It was a sophisticated financial operation masquerading as a decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO. The concept of a DAO is one of the most idealistic in the entire crypto world, a member-owned community without centralized leadership, where decisions are made collectively through token-based voting. AnubisDAO presented itself as an investment fund of sorts, one that would pool resources from thousands of small investors to acquire valuable blue-chip NFTs and other digital assets, sharing the profits with its members. It was a compelling pitch: strength in numbers, democratized finance, and collective wisdom, all wrapped in the mystique of ancient Egyptian mythology. The fundraising mechanism was a liquidity bootstrapping pool, or LBP, a common method in the decentralized finance world. For a brief 30-hour window in late October 2021, the project opened its digital doors to investors, allowing them to exchange their Ethereum for the project's native token, called Anubis. The promise was that these tokens would represent their share of the treasury and grant them governance rights. The response was overwhelming. Lured by the professional presentation and the powerful DAO narrative, investors poured a breathtaking $57 million in Ethereum into the project's wallet. It was a monumental show of faith in a completely anonymous team, a testament to how powerfully the ideals of decentralization could override basic financial caution. Then, just 21 hours after the liquidity pool had closed, it all vanished. The project's official Twitter account sent out a terse, devastating message. The deployer of the liquidity contract appears to have rugged. We do not recommend buying Anubis. The entire treasury, every single bit of that $57 million, had been drained from the project's wallet and sent to an unknown account. The Anubis tokens held by investors were instantly rendered worthless, their value evaporating because there was no longer any assets backing them. It was a financial black hole, and the anonymous individuals behind AnubisDAO had simply disappeared into the void, leaving no explanation, no apology, and no trace. The immediate aftermath was a scene of pure chaos and despair. The project's Discord server, once buzzing with excited speculation about future investments, became a digital memorial for lost life savings. Investors scrambled for answers, trying to piece together what had happened, many refusing to believe they could have been wiped out so completely and so quickly. The scale of the loss was unprecedented. This wasn't a $1.3 million frosty scam. This was a $57 million catastrophe, affecting a much larger and arguably more sophisticated group of investors who thought they were participating in a legitimate, community-driven financial experiment. The investigation into what actually occurred pointed to one of two terrifying possibilities, both highlighting critical vulnerabilities in the system. The first theory was a classic inside job. The anonymous founders who held the private keys to the project's treasury wallet may have simply decided to take the money and run from the very beginning, using the idealistic DAO framework as an elaborate and highly effective smokescreen for a premeditated theft. The second, and perhaps even more unsettling theory, was that the founders themselves were victims of a sophisticated hack. Their digital wallet, which held the private keys needed to access the $57 million, may have been compromised by an outside party through a phishing attack or a malware infection. In this scenario, the hackers were simply waiting for the pool to fill up before swooping in to drain it, turning the founders' negligence into a payday. This second possibility exposes the terrifying fragility of the entire system. In traditional finance, a bank robbery requires overcoming physical security, alarms, and guards. In the world of crypto, a $100 million heist can be executed by a single individual on the other side of the planet who gains access to a string of 64 characters, a private key. There are no chargebacks, no insurance policies, and no government guarantees. The immutable nature of the blockchain, often touted as its greatest strength, becomes its greatest cruelty in these moments. The transaction that stole the funds is permanently recorded and completely irreversible, a monument to the theft that everyone can see but no one can undo. The AnubisDAO heist stands as one of the most devastating and instructive scandals in the history of digital assets. It demonstrated that the allure of decentralization could be weaponized to create the ultimate con, one where there is no company to sue, no executive to arrest, and no physical location to investigate. It was a stark lesson that in a trustless system, the burden of trust doesn't disappear. It simply gets shifted onto the user, who must now trust in the absolute infallibility of anonymous code and the absolute integrity of anonymous strangers. The fallout left a permanent scar on the concept of DAOs, proving that a structure designed to eliminate corruptible human leadership could be just as easily exploited by it, resulting in a level of financial destruction that would make even the most ruthless Gilded Age robber baron blanch. At the core of the AnubisDAO disaster lies a fundamental misunderstanding of what a smart contract can and cannot do. Many investors believed that the code itself was an unbreakable vault, a perfect digital guardian for their funds. In reality, a smart contract is simply a set of pre-written, self-executing rules. Its security is only as good as the intentions and competence of the person who wrote those rules. Think of it like giving a stranger a suitcase full of cash, along with a detailed list of instructions on what they're allowed to do with it. The list of rules might be perfectly written, but if you handed the suitcase to a thief, they would simply ignore the instructions and run off with the money. The AnubisDAO smart contract likely executed its functions exactly as coded. The problem was that the individuals with control over the Treasury wallet had malicious intent from the start, making the code itself irrelevant to the outcome. This exploit specifically targeted a critical vulnerability in the design of many DeFi projects: the concentration of power. Despite the democratic rhetoric of decentralized autonomous organizations, AnubisDAO was not truly decentralized at the time of the heist. Control over the massive treasury was not distributed among the thousands of token holders. It was held by a very small number of anonymous founders who possessed the all-important private keys. These cryptographic keys are the absolute master passwords to a crypto wallet. Whoever holds them has complete, unilateral control over every asset inside. The founders' possession of these keys created a single point of catastrophic failure, a central flaw utterly at odds with the decentralized ethos they were selling. The entire $57 million treasury was, for all intents and purposes, sitting in a digital safe, and the founders held the only combination. The mechanism of the theft was brutally simple and highlights the irreversible nature of blockchain transactions. The individual or group with control of the Treasury wallet initiated a transfer, moving the entire balance of Ethereum to an external wallet address they controlled. This transaction was then broadcast to the Ethereum network, where miners verified it and added it to a new block on the blockchain. Within minutes, the deed was done. Once confirmed, a blockchain transaction is permanent. There is no customer service line to call, no fraud department to reverse the charges, and no governing body to appeal to. The immutable public ledger, often praised for its transparency, now served as an unchangeable record of the theft, a cruel paradox for investors who could see their stolen funds sitting in a new wallet, but were completely powerless to get them back. This event shattered the false sense of security that many newcomers bring to the world of decentralized finance. They often confuse the security of the underlying blockchain technology with the security of the applications built on top of it. The Ethereum blockchain itself has never been successfully hacked. Its network is incredibly secure, but the smart contracts and protocols operating on it are created by humans, and humans are fallible, whether through error or malice. Investing in a DeFi project is not like depositing money in a bank, which is backed by insurance and regulation. It is more like being an early-stage venture capitalist, assuming immense technical and counterparty risk for the chance of a reward, but without any of the traditional legal safeguards or avenues for recourse if things go horribly wrong. The aftermath of AnubisDAO forced a painful but necessary maturation within the crypto community. It became a cornerstone case study, emphasizing the critical importance of concepts like trust minimization and the need for rigorous smart contract audits conducted by independent third-party firms. It taught investors to ask harder questions before investing. Who exactly holds the private keys to the treasury? Is control actually decentralized, or is it in the hands of a few anonymous individuals? Has the code been thoroughly audited? The heist demonstrated that in the pursuit of a decentralized future, the oldest rule in finance still applies. If something seems too good to be true, and you are asked to trust a stranger with your life savings, you are probably making a terrible mistake. The technology is new, but the principles of caution and due diligence are as old as time. Yet even a $57 million heist couldn't prepare the community for a different kind of betrayal, one that traded outright theft for something almost more insulting: sheer, staggering incompetence. This is the saga of Pixelman, a project that didn't just fail to deliver on its promises. It became an instant legend for delivering something so jaw-droppingly awful that it transcended scandal and achieved a kind of comedic immortality. In a space rife with cynical fraud, Pixelman's sin was a unique blend of breathtaking ambition and laughable execution, a cautionary tale about what happens when hype completely detaches from reality. The project's ambition was, to be fair, absolutely staggering. It wasn't just another profile picture collection. It was pitched as nothing less than the next Pokémon, a fully fledged AAA game built on blockchain. The vision was expansive: an open-world metaverse where players could explore, battle, and breed their unique Pixelman creatures, with the NFTs serving as both playable characters and verifiable proof of ownership. The hype was manufactured to a fever pitch. The anonymous founder, known only as Cyber, gave interviews to major crypto news outlets, laying out a detailed roadmap and showcasing sleek, professional concept art that suggested a level of polish and funding comparable to a major studio release. Investors weren't just buying a digital pet. They were buying a front-row seat to the future of gaming. This powerful vision, combined with masterful marketing, triggered one of the most explosive fundraising events the NFT world had ever seen. In February 2022, the project opened its mint, and the response was volcanic. In a single day, aspiring trainers and eager speculators poured a staggering $70 million in Ethereum into the project's treasury. The floor price for one of the 8,000 generation one Pixelman NFTs soared, with some rare characters selling on the secondary market for thousands of dollars each. The belief was absolute. People were convinced they were funding a revolution, backing the project that would finally bring blockchain gaming into the mainstream. The trust placed in Cyber and his anonymous team was total, and it was about to be met with one of the most infamous reveals in internet history. The day of the reveal arrived, and the community's excitement was palpable. This was the moment they would finally see the high-quality, game-ready assets they had invested in. What they actually saw defied all expectations, but not in the way anyone had hoped. Instead of the polished, animated creatures from the concept art, holders were airdropped images that looked like they were ripped from a 20-year-old video game, rendered with the graphical fidelity of a poorly made Roblox mod. The artwork was hilariously bad. Limbs were misaligned, textures were blurry and low resolution, and the designs lacked any of the charm or coherence promised. One creature, famously dubbed Kevin, became the instant poster child for the disaster, a bewildered-looking blue hippo-like monster with bizarrely stunted wings and an expression of pure, polygon-induced despair. The backlash was immediate, universal, and merciless. Social media exploded. Pixelman wasn't just criticized, it was memed into oblivion. Kevin became an iconic symbol of catastrophic failure, his image photoshopped into masterpieces and shared across every platform. The project's Discord server descended into chaos, a mix of rage, disbelief, and gallows humor. Investors who had spent tens of thousands of dollars found themselves holding a digital asset that was now a laughingstock, its financial value evaporating almost as quickly as its cultural credibility. The $70 million project was instantly worth a fraction of that amount, not because the money was stolen, but because it had been so spectacularly wasted on a product that was objectively, undeniably terrible. In the storm of outrage, all eyes turned to the anonymous founder, Cyber. Facing a total collapse of his project and his reputation, he did something almost unprecedented. He went on a recorded voice chat in the project's Discord and offered a full, raw, and surprisingly candid apology. He admitted his own inexperience, confessing that he had hired cheap, incompetent artists from freelance websites without proper oversight, and that he had been in over his head from the very beginning. He hadn't set out to scam anyone. He had simply failed catastrophically to deliver on a vision that was too ambitious for his capabilities. He promised to use the remaining funds from the mint, a sum still in the millions, and to hire a legitimate studio and completely rebuild the game and the artwork from the ground up. This desperate move to salvage the project marked a new, bizarre chapter. Against all odds, Cyber began to follow through. He revealed his real identity as Martin Van Blurk, and his company, Liquid X Studio, started the long, arduous process of rebuilding trust. They acquired a reputable game development studio, began hiring top-tier talent, and started releasing genuinely impressive new artwork and game trailers that finally matched the original vision. The community, though deeply scarred, watched with a mixture of skepticism and hope. The value of the NFTs, which had cratered to near zero, began a slow and painful recovery as the team demonstrated tangible progress. Pixelman had gone from a $70 million joke to a $70 million redemption arc in the making, a unique experiment in whether a project could actually recover from a failure of that magnitude. The reveal of the Pixelman artwork didn't just cause financial losses. It ignited a cultural firestorm that instantly transformed the project from a highly anticipated game into the internet's favorite punching bag. At the center of this maelstrom was one specific creature, a blue, bewildered-looking hippo dragon, hybrid with stunted wings, in a poorly rendered, utterly despondent expression. This NFT, officially known as Pixelman number 7322, was swiftly christened Kevin by the community, and within hours, he became the undeniable mascot for catastrophic failure. His image was so perfectly, tragically awful that it transcended the NFT space and went completely viral. Memes flooded Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok, with Kevin photoshopped into the Sistine Chapel, featured in famous movie scenes, and even reimagined as a disillusioned office worker. He was no longer just a bad digital asset. He was a relatable symbol of promised grandeur colliding with laughable reality, a feeling that resonated far beyond the world of crypto. This organic, community-driven mockery was far more powerful than any financial critique could have been. The memes did more than just ridicule. They completely reframed the narrative around Pixelman's collapse. The story was no longer solely about $70 million potentially being wasted. It became a shared cultural moment of humor and collective disbelief. This public roasting served a crucial function. It drained the project of any remaining speculative hype and replaced it with a potent dose of shame and notoriety. For investors, holding a Pixelman NFT, especially a Kevin, became a badge of dishonor, a permanent reminder of a terrible investment decision that the entire internet was now laughing about. This social pressure amplified the financial loss, creating a powerful deterrent for others who might have considered buying the dip, effectively ensuring the floor price would remain in the gutter. Facing this tsunami of ridicule and rage, the anonymous founder known as Cyber did something almost unheard of in the often shady world of failed crypto projects. He showed up. In a series of candid, raw voice chats in the project's Discord server, he offered a startlingly honest apology. He didn't hide behind excuses or vanish into the ether. Instead, he admitted his own profound inexperience and incompetence. He confessed to hiring cheap, unvetted artists from online freelance platforms without providing proper oversight or clear direction, leading to the disastrous mismatch between the stunning concept art and the pitiful final product. His message was clear. This was not a premeditated scam or a rug pull. It was a spectacular failure of execution by someone who was in far over his head. Cyber's apology was a high-risk gambit. Full transparency could have easily fueled more anger, but its sheer genuineness managed to fracture the community's unified front of outrage. While many investors remained rightfully furious, others began to see a glimmer of humanity in the disaster. The admission of failure, coupled with a promise to use the remaining millions from the treasury to make things right, created a bizarre new narrative, the redemption arc. Cyber, later revealing himself to be entrepreneur Martin Van Blerk, and his company Liquid X Studio, began the long, arduous process of rebuilding. They started by acquiring a reputable game development studio and slowly began releasing previews of completely remodeled, genuinely impressive Pixelman creatures, proving they were willing to invest real time and capital to salvage their reputation. The saga of Kevin and the community backlash that followed offers a masterclass in how modern internet culture can hold projects accountable. In the absence of formal regulation, the court of public opinion, armed with the weapon of mimetic humiliation, became a powerful governing force. It demonstrated that a project's reputation is its most valuable asset, and that a community's ability to shape a narrative through shared mockery can be just as damaging as a financial crash. Pixelman's journey from laughingstock to a project attempting a genuine comeback is a unique story in the crypto world, proving that while hype can build an empire overnight, only quality and transparency can ever hope to rebuild one from the ashes. Just when the community thought they had seen every possible flavor of deception, FROM, Chinese letter, theft to spectacular incompetence, the Baller Ape Club rolled out a masterclass in multifaceted fraud. This project took the playbook and rewrote it with a new layer of audacity, combining the artistic theft of the Squiggles scandal with a brazen forgery of the very security measures designed to protect investors. It wasn't just a rug pull or a simple art heist. It was a meticulously crafted illusion of legitimacy, designed to disarm even the most cautious participants from the very moment they arrived on the project's website. The first layer of this illusion was the artwork itself. The Baller Ape Club presented a collection of 10,000 cartoon apes, each accessorized with basketball jerseys, bling, and a distinctly athletic swagger, clearly designed to tap into the same cultural vein as the immensely successful Bored Ape Yacht Club. However, eagle-eyed digital artists and collectors quickly began spotting alarming similarities between these new apes and pre-existing artwork from other, smaller NFT projects and independent creators. The allegations were not just of inspiration, but of direct, traceable theft. Specific traits: a particular pair of sunglasses, a unique chain necklace, a background element, appeared to be lifted pixel for pixel from other artists' work and composited together to create the new collection. This wasn't just plagiarism. It was a digital collage of stolen property, assembled to create a facade of original content without any of the creative labor or ethical considerations. But the truly insidious innovation of the Baller Ape Club was its weaponization of trust. In the wake of countless anonymous rug pulls, the community had begun to demand more from projects. A key indicator of safety became KYC, which stands for Know Your Customer. This is a standard banking and financial regulation that requires businesses to verify the identity of their clients. In the NFT world, this translates to a project's core team voluntarily doxing themselves, providing government-issued identification to a trusted third-party auditing firm. That firm would then verify their identities and confirm to the public that the people behind the project were real, traceable individuals, theoretically making it harder for them to simply vanish with the funds. For investors, a KYC team became a green light, a symbol that a project was legitimate and its founders were accountable. The Baller Ape Club didn't just claim to be KYC'd. They presented what looked like ironclad proof. Their website featured a prominent badge from a supposed verification platform, certifying that the team had undergone this rigorous process. This badge was a powerful psychological tool. It effectively told potential investors, "You can stop worrying. We are who we say we are, and we can't disappear. We've been vetted." This single symbol allowed the project to bypass the heightened skepticism of a scarred community, encouraging people to let their guard down and focus on the hype rather than the underlying details of the project's artwork or its admittedly vague roadmap. The entire scheme unraveled when independent blockchain investigators and community watchdogs decided to look behind the curtain of that all-important KYC badge. Their investigation revealed a stunning deception. The verification platform itself was a complete fabrication. It had no digital footprint before the Baller Ape Club project, and its website was nothing more than a shallow shell, lacking any record of verifying other projects or any legitimate business registration. The auditing firm was a prop, created entirely by the same anonymous individuals behind the Baller Ape Club. The KYC verification was a total fiction, a Potemkin village of security designed to provide a false sense of comfort while the team prepared to execute their exit strategy. The fallout was a new low in the erosion of trust. While investors were accustomed to outright theft from anonymous actors, this felt different. This was a calculated, psychological manipulation that exploited the community's own hard-learned lessons about safety. The project founders had identified the very mechanism people relied on to feel secure, the KYC process, and they had counterfeit it. They didn't just steal artwork and money. They stole the language of security itself, making it exponentially harder for legitimate projects to gain trust in the future. Every real KYC badge would now be viewed with a sliver of doubt, a lasting poison injected into the ecosystem by a single brazen act of forgery. The scandal served as a brutal reminder that in a digital world where anything can be faked, the burden of verification ultimately falls, once again, on the individual investor to look past the shiny badges and ask the much harder question: who am I really being asked to trust? The Baller Ape Club's use of a completely fake verification platform was a masterstroke of deception, but it was far from the only trick in the fraudster's handbook when it came to manufacturing trust. Once a project has its artwork and its fake KYC badge, the next layer of the illusion often involves something called a smart contract audit. In the world of decentralized finance, an audit is meant to be a rigorous, impartial examination of a project's underlying code by a specialized cybersecurity firm. These auditors search for vulnerabilities, backdoors, or errors that could lead to a hack or a rug pull. For a legitimate project, passing an audit is a crucial step, a seal of approval that tells investors the fundamental technology is sound. For a scammer, however, a real audit is a dangerous obstacle, so they simply create a fake one instead. This process is alarmingly straightforward and exploits the average investor's lack of technical expertise. A fraudulent project will often commission a superficial audit from a complicit or completely fictitious firm. These reports are typically packed with impenetrable technical jargon and generic, copy-pasted language that sounds impressive but commits to nothing. They might feature a long list of tests that were supposedly passed, but upon closer inspection, these tests are vague and meaningless. The final report will then be adorned with an official-looking seal or a passed stamp and prominently displayed on the project's website. To someone who doesn't know how to read the fine print, it looks like a clean bill of health, a professional endorsement that the code is secure. In reality, it's little more than a PDF file designed to provide a false sense of safety, purchased for a few $100s to help secure a multi-million-dollar payday. The final piece of the fabricated legitimacy puzzle involves the strategic use of misleading partnerships. Scam projects understand that credibility is often borrowed, so they go to great lengths to create the impression that they are backed by or affiliated with established, reputable companies in the crypto space or beyond. This can be as simple as paying an influencer from a well-known venture capital firm to make a single, vague tweet about the project, which is then screenshot and presented as a strategic investment. Other times, they will list logos of major companies like Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, or Binance on their website, implying a partnership when in reality, they are merely using a service that anyone can sign up for, like cloud hosting or a standard application programming interface. Some schemes take this even further by engaging in vampire attacks, a particularly brazen form of brand theft. They will deliberately choose a name and visual identity very similar to an already successful and trusted project, hoping to confuse investors and siphon off their community's goodwill. The goal of all these tactics is the same: to create a thick fog of associated credibility that makes it difficult for an investor to see the empty core at the heart of the operation. By the time a potential buyer has seen the stolen artwork, the fake KYC badge, the paid for audit, and the logos of major tech companies, their critical defenses are often worn down. The project feels real because it has been dressed in the costume of legitimacy, a costume that is surprisingly easy to rent for a short time. This meticulous construction of trust is what makes the eventual rug pull so devastating. Investors weren't just tricked by an anonymous username. They were betrayed by a carefully crafted illusion that mimicked every sign of safety they had been taught to look for. But the lines between promotion and deception became even more blurred with the rise of music NFTs, a niche that promised to revolutionize the music industry itself. Enter Oculus, a platform that aimed to use blockchain technology to allow fans to invest directly in the future royalties of their favorite artists' songs. It was a groundbreaking concept, offering a new way for musicians to fund their work and for supporters to share in their success. And when the legendary Snoop Dogg came on board as a lead investor and partner, the project instantly gained an aura of superstar credibility and mainstream potential. Here was a bona fide music icon, a cultural titan with decades in the industry, seemingly putting his weight behind a utopian vision for the future of music finance. The excitement reached a fever pitch with the launch of the first ever Oculus music NFT drop, featuring none other than Snoop Dogg himself. The sale wasn't for a simple digital collectible. It was framed as an investment in a specific Snoop Dogg track, Paris. Fans weren't just buying a piece of art. They were buying a piece of the song's future streaming royalties. This was the core promise of Oculus, and it was incredibly seductive. For a few $100s, a fan could become a micro-patron for their idol, theoretically earning passive income every time the song was played on Spotify, Apple Music, or other platforms. It felt like the ultimate fusion of fandom and finance, a chance to be part of the music business in a way that was previously reserved for wealthy label executives. The initial sale was a massive success, selling out quickly and generating significant buzz. But soon after the euphoria of the purchase faded, a wave of confusion and disappointment began to set in among buyers. The first major point of contention was the actual utility of the NFT itself. Many purchasers had assumed that owning the NFT would automatically grant them a straightforward, proportional share of the song's royalties. with payments flowing directly to their digital wallets. The reality was far more complex and opaque. The royalty distribution wasn't handled on-chain through the smart contract. Instead, it was managed off-chain by the Oculus company, with plans to distribute earnings quarterly based on data from traditional music rights organizations. This process lacked the transparency and immediacy that many had come to expect from DeFi applications, creating a worrying trust gap. The financial reality of the investment also began to dawn on the community. To earn a meaningful return, the song, Paris, would need to generate an astronomical number of streams. Basic calculations showed that a fan who invested around $400 would need the song to accumulate hundreds of millions of streams just to break even, a feat achieved by only a tiny fraction of all music released. For most investors, the potential financial return was negligible at best, making the purchase feel less like a sound investment and more like an extremely expensive piece of digital memorabilia. The dream of being a music mogul collided with the hard math of the streaming economy, and the dream lost. The most profound sense of betrayal, however, came from a perceived bait and switch regarding Snoop Dogg's involvement. While he was the face of the launch and the artist behind the song, it was revealed that the NFT did not grant ownership in the master recording of Paris, the most valuable part of a song's rights. Instead, investors were buying into a share of the publishing royalties, a much smaller and more complex slice of the revenue pie. Furthermore, Snoop's role was primarily as a partner in Oculus, not necessarily as the artist personally championing this new model to his fans. The distinction was critical. The campaign felt less like an artist-led innovation and more like a celebrity-backed business venture, using Snoop's immense cultural capital to sell a complex financial product that may not have lived up to the simplified, exciting narrative presented in the marketing. The Oculus controversy became a case study in the perils of over-promising and the ethical responsibilities of celebrity endorsers in the Web3 space. It demonstrated that even with a legitimate project and real technology, the failure to manage expectations with crystal clarity could lead to a crisis of trust. Fans felt they had purchased a vision of democratized music ownership, only to receive a convoluted financial instrument with questionable value. It highlighted a recurring theme in these digital scandals. The technology often moves faster than the language needed to describe it accurately, leaving a gap where hype can flourish and misunderstandings can turn into accusations of bad faith, even when the intentions might have been genuine. This gap between the shimmering promises made during a project's launch and the underwhelming reality that follows has become one of the most pervasive and frustrating themes across the entire NFT landscape. The term utility itself became a magic wand, waved by project founders to transform a simple digital image into a must-have key for a future kingdom of exclusive benefits. These promises were rarely small. They were grand, multi-layered visions designed to justify soaring price tags and build fervent community belief. A typical roadmap might pledge exclusive access to future video games, physical merchandise drops, token-gated concerts with famous musicians, lucrative staking rewards that generated passive income, and even votes in a decentralized organization that would guide the project's destiny. Investors weren't just buying art. They were buying a ticket to an entire ecosystem a sense of belonging, and a financial future all rolled into one. The harsh reality, however, often began to set in just weeks or months after the final NFT was sold. The vibrant Discord community, once buzzing with excited speculation about the upcoming game, would grow quiet as development updates became vague and then ceased altogether. The promised merchandise store would never materialize, or would offer a single poorly made t-shirt design instead of the extensive catalog that was teased. The much vaunted celebrity partnerships would be revealed as nothing more than a paid tweet from a rapper's marketing team, with no genuine involvement or long-term commitment. The staking rewards, if they ever launched, would offer returns so minuscule that it would take decades to recoup the initial investment. One by one, the pillars of utility would crumble, leaving holders with a JPEG that was functionally identical to the one they purchased on day one, but now stripped of all its imagined potential and future value. This failure to deliver stems from a fundamental misalignment between ambition and execution. Many projects were started by ambitious marketers and community managers who understood how to sell a dream, but had absolutely no experience in the complex, expensive, and time-consuming fields they were promising to conquer. Building a AAA video game requires a team of dozens of skilled developers, artists, and designers working for years with a budget in the tens of millions. Producing and shipping high-quality, physical merchandise to a global audience is a logistics nightmare. Securing genuine, ongoing partnerships with major brands or artists involves a level of business development that most anonymous NFT founders were completely unequipped to handle. The initial funding raised from the NFT sale, which seemed like a fortune to a small team, was often a fraction of what was actually needed to bring their gargantuan roadmap to life, leading to half-finished products, abandoned initiatives, and a trail of broken promises. The emotional and financial impact on holders is profound. Beyond the obvious monetary loss as the value of their asset plummets, there's a deep sense of personal betrayal that is unique to these utility failures. Unlike a straightforward rug pull where a thief simply vanishes, these projects often linger, with founders remaining in their Discord servers offering endless excuses, revised roadmaps, and requests for more patience. This stringing along creates a toxic cycle of hope and disappointment, preventing investors from cutting their losses and moving on. They hold on month after month, clinging to the original vision and the sunk cost of their investment, only to watch the project slowly fade into irrelevance. The asset they purchased as a key to a vibrant future becomes a constant, nagging reminder of a dream that was sold to them but never arrived, a digital monument to their own credulity and the empty rhetoric of utility that was used to exploit it. Yet even the grandest promises of digital real estate and exclusive access were about to be eclipsed by a scheme that sold pure, unadulterated fantasy. Enter MetaStars, a project that didn't just promise a new NFT or a simple game, it promised an entire life of luxury in the metaverse, a digital paradise for the elite. The vision was breathtaking in its ambition and audacity. MetaStars wasn't selling cartoon apes or pixelated punks. It was selling deeds to sprawling virtual villas on private islands, exclusive access to concerts with top-tier DJs, and the chance to rub digital shoulders with a curated roster of celebrity residents. It was a pitch that tapped directly into the deepest desires of a new money culture: status, exclusivity, and a tangible piece of the futuristic metaverse dream, all wrapped in a glossy, impossibly glamorous package. The marketing for MetaStars was a masterclass in selling aspiration. Their website and promotional videos were dripping with CGI-rendered glamour, showcasing stunning virtual properties with infinity pools overlooking digital oceans, sleek yachts bobbing in a pixelated marina, and animated trailers featuring avatars of A-list celebrities casually enjoying this new world. The project's lore suggested that by purchasing a MetaStars NFT, you weren't just buying an asset. You were purchasing a membership into the most exclusive country club on the internet. The promise extended beyond the virtual, with whispers of real-world benefits and events, blurring the lines between digital ownership and tangible luxury in a way that felt incredibly seductive and, for many, utterly irresistible. This powerful narrative triggered a monumental fundraising effort. Investors, captivated by the vision of a luxury metaverse, poured millions of dollars into the project during its various funding rounds. The promise of virtual real estate was particularly potent, riding the massive wave of hype around platforms like the Sandbox and Decentralized, where digital land parcels were selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. MetaStars positioned itself as the next evolution, not just land, but a fully realized and lavishly appointed destination. The project's anonymous founders, who operated under the slick branding of the MetaStars Foundation, encouraged this belief, consistently releasing new concept art and development updates that suggested a team of hundreds working tirelessly to build this digital utopia. Then, without a single warning, the entire illusion evaporated. The project's official Twitter account went dark. The meticulously crafted website disappeared, returning only a generic error message. The heart of the community, its Discord server, was instantly deleted, wiping out years of conversations, announcements, and investor support in a literal blink of an eye. The founders, along with every dollar of the invested capital, vanished into the ether. The luxurious villas, the celebrity partnerships, the exclusive events, all of it was revealed to be nothing more than an elaborate fiction, a collection of purchased stock assets and empty promises designed to lure in victims with the allure of a life they could never afford in the real world. The mechanics of the heist were as simple as they were ruthless. The entire project was a facade. The stunning CGI trailers were likely produced by a freelance animator with no connection to any actual game development. The celebrity partnerships were pure fabrication, using the names and likenesses of stars without their permission or knowledge. The smart contract for the NFTs was nothing more than a basic minting machine, designed to collect funds without any of the complex code needed to actually power a virtual world or track property ownership. Once the final dollar was collected from the final investor, the founders executed a classic rug pull, transferring the entire treasury, estimated to be in the tens of millions, to anonymous wallets, leaving thousands of people holding NFTs that were now nothing more than worthless keys to a kingdom that never existed. The aftermath was a special kind of devastation. Unlike a failed project that at least delivered a piece of artwork, MetaStars investors were left with absolutely nothing. Their NFTs depicted villas and yachts that were nothing but stolen stock images, digital ghosts of a fantasy that was sold to them as an imminent reality. The financial loss was staggering, but it was compounded by the emotional whiplash of having bought into such an intoxicating and detailed dream. The scam preyed on a very specific kind of hope, the belief that the metaverse could be a place of not just community, but unparalleled luxury and status. The collapse of metastars became a stark symbol of the extreme risk inherent in buying into any vision that is all promise and no product, a cautionary tale written in the disappearing ink of virtual champagne and pixelated gold. Behind every transaction on the blockchain, behind every anonymous wallet address, and every deleted Discord server, there is a human being whose life was permanently altered. The true cost of these scandals cannot be measured in Ethereum or dollars alone. It is etched into the psyches of those who believed in the promise of a new frontier, only to be left with financial ruin and a profound sense of betrayal. We've chronicled the schemes and the mechanics of the thefts, but now we must turn to the aftermath, the shattered lives, and the lingering trauma that these digital heists have left in their wake. For many, the investment was not merely discretionary income. It was a life's work, a carefully saved nest egg, or a bold gamble meant to secure a better future. Imagine the single parent who invested a portion of their child's college fund after reading a celebrity endorsement, convinced it was a safe bet. Picture the retiree who diversified a small pension into what was touted as the next big thing in digital art, hoping for supplemental income. These were not reckless day traders. They were ordinary people from all walks of life, persuaded by a potent mix of community excitement, fear of missing out, and the seemingly legitimizing glow of celebrity influence. Their stories are often silenced by shame, a crushing emotion that prevents them from speaking out, leaving them to bear the burden of their loss in isolating silence. The emotional toll extends far beyond the initial shock of seeing a portfolio's value evaporate. Victims describe a cascading series of psychological blows. First, the disbelief and frantic searching for answers in a suddenly silent online community. Then, the dawning horror and self-recrimination, asking themselves over and over how they could have been so foolish. And finally, a deep, lingering anxiety and distrust that colors their view of all financial systems, both traditional and digital. This is not a simple case of buyer's remorse. It is a form of financial trauma that can trigger genuine symptoms of depression, anxiety, and intense stress, impacting personal relationships and overall well-being for years to come. The constant nagging thought isn't just that they lost money, but that they were personally duped, that their own hope and optimism were used as weapons against them. This erosion of trust is perhaps the most damaging legacy of these scandals, casting a long shadow over the entire ecosystem. For every legitimate artist and ethical builder trying to create something of value in the Web3 space, they now face an uphill battle against a tidal wave of cynicism. How can a new project ask for trust when the very concept has been so thoroughly weaponized by fake KYC badges and fabricated audits? The community's natural state has shifted from optimistic collaboration to defensive suspicion, where every announcement is scrutinized for exit scams and every founder is presumed guilty until proven otherwise. This environment stifles genuine innovation and makes it incredibly difficult for honest creators to find support. as the memory of stolen savings makes investors understandably hesitant to ever risk capital again. The impact also ripples outward into the broader world of art and creativity. The rampant plagiarism and art theft have made many traditional digital artists deeply wary of the NFT space altogether, viewing it not as a liberation from gallery gatekeepers, but as a lawless digital Wild West where their work is constantly under threat of being stolen and monetized by strangers. This deprives the entire movement of incredible talent and reinforces the perception that crypto art is a haven for speculators rather than a home for creators. The grand vision of a decentralized renaissance for artists has been, for many, corrupted into a nightmare of constant vigilance and copyright enforcement. Ultimately, the human cost of these scandals serves as the most powerful cautionary tale. It underscores a timeless truth that gets lost in the hype of technological disruption, that systems are only as strong as the ethics of the people who build and govern them. A blockchain can be immutable, and a smart contract can be flawlessly executed. But if the human intention behind it is malicious, the technology becomes a tool for exploitation, not empowerment. The stories of lost life savings and broken trust are a sobering reminder that behind every innovation, we must never forget to ask the most important question: who benefits and at whose expense? The path forward for digital assets depends on reckoning with this human damage and building a future where security, transparency, and accountability are not just marketing slogans, but the non-negotiable foundations upon which everything else is built. So how do we navigate this landscape, armed with the hard lessons from those who lost before us? The key isn't to abandon the space entirely, but to cultivate a healthy, unshakable skepticism and a rigorous process for separating potential from peril. The first and most critical red flag is perhaps the most obvious yet most frequently ignored: the anonymous team. If the founders and developers are hiding behind cartoon avatars and pseudonyms like Crypto Wizard or Evil Ape, you are not investing in a project. You are donating to a ghost. Anonymity is the scammer's greatest weapon, providing a perfect cloak to vanish without a trace after the money is collected. A legitimate project with long-term ambitions will have a public, docs team with verifiable LinkedIn profiles and professional histories. You should be able to see the faces and know the names of the people asking for your trust and your money. If they are unwilling to stand publicly behind their work, you should be unwilling to stand behind them with your wallet. Closely tied to this is the siren song of the unrealistic promise. Be deeply wary of any project that guarantees astronomical returns or presents a roadmap that sounds like a fantasy novel. If they are promising to build a complex video game, launch a token, deliver physical merchandise, and create a metaverse all within a few months with a tiny team and budget, you are not looking at a plan. You are looking at a wish list designed to seduce. Remember the catastrophic gap between Pixelman's promise and its delivery. Scammers understand that ambition fuels investment, so they will always overpromise, knowing they have no intention of ever delivering. Evaluate every claim with a simple question: does this seem achievable by a real company with real resources? Or does it only make sense in the hyperbolic world of crypto hype? This leads directly to the third major warning sign: the manufactured frenzy and the pressure to buy immediately. scam projects operate on a carefully engineered timeline of urgency. Their Discord servers will be filled with bots or paid shills chanting, "When mint," and "Ape in." Countdown clocks will tick down on their websites, and influencers will be paid to create a deafening roar of excitement. This is all designed to trigger your fear of missing out and override your rational, critical thinking brain. They want you to feel that if you don't buy right now, you will miss the opportunity of a lifetime. A legitimate project is confident in its value proposition and understands that investors need time to conduct proper due diligence. They will welcome questions, not suppress them with a wave of frantic hype. If you feel rushed, you are being manipulated. Protecting yourself, then, requires a shift from passive consumer to active investigator. Your research should be a multi-step process that goes far beyond reading the project's own marketing materials. Start with the team. Verify every claimed team member. Do their LinkedIn profiles seem authentic? Do their career histories align with the skills needed to execute this project? A quick reverse image search on their profile pictures can often reveal if they are stock photos or stolen from someone else's social media. Next, scrutinize the smart contract. Has it been audited by a reputable, well-known firm like CertiK or QuantStamp? And crucially, don't just look for an audit badge on the website. Go to the auditing firm's own website and verify that the audit is legitimately listed there. Remember the lesson of the Baller Ape Club's completely fake verification. Then, dive into the community and the project's history. Lurk in their Discord and Telegram channels. Is the conversation substantive, with thoughtful discussions about technology and utility? Or is it just a chaotic mess of moon emojis and price talk? Look for how the moderators and founders handle tough questions. Are they transparent and patient? Or do they dismiss criticism and ban skeptics? Search for the project on Twitter and Reddit outside of its own controlled channels. See what independent commentators and crypto investigators are saying. Tools like rugscreen.com can provide a quick, automated check for some basic red flags. This investigative work might take you an hour or two, but that is a trivial amount of time to spend when the goal is to protect your hard-earned savings from vanishing into the digital ether. The most powerful investment you can make in the NFT space is not in any one token, but in your own ability to discern the genuine from the fraudulent. From the inside trading at OpenSea that shattered the illusion of a fair marketplace, to the outright theft of the Evolved Apes and Frosty's rug pulls, we've seen how anonymity can be a shield for brazen criminality. We witnessed the calculated market manipulation in the Milo Universe scandal, where celebrity influence was weaponized to exploit fan trust for a quick profit. The artistic soul of the space was violated in the Squiggles plagiarism epidemic, where creators saw their life's work stolen and minted by strangers. The scale of deception reached a terrifying apex with the AnubisDAO heist, a $57 million catastrophe that laid bare the fatal flaws in unaudited, anonymous financial systems. And then there was the sheer, spectacular failure of Pixelman, a $70 million lesson in how grand ambition without the slightest hint of competence can be just as devastating as malicious intent. The Baller Ape Club showed us that even the tools we create for safety, like KYC verification, can be expertly forged into weapons of deception. The Opulous music royalty saga revealed how even legitimate projects can crumble under the weight of overpromising and murky financial realities. And finally, Metastars sold a multi-million-dollar fantasy of a luxury metaverse, a digital mirage that evaporated the moment the last investor handed over their funds. Each of these 10 scandals, in its own way, serves as a stark monument to the same timeless forces: unchecked greed, the seductive power of hype, and the vulnerability that comes with revolutionary, unregulated technology. What's truly striking is how these digital age deceptions echo the financial manias of centuries past. The frenzied speculation on tulip bulbs in 17th century Holland, the wildcat railroad schemes of the American Gilded Age, the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s. Each period was defined by a powerful new innovation that created unimaginable wealth and simultaneously unimaginable opportunities for exploitation. Human nature remains the one constant in every financial cycle. The technology evolves, the assets digitize, but the underlying psychology of fear, greed, and the desperate fear of missing out is utterly timeless. We are forever destined to believe that this time is different, that this new technology has truly changed the rules, only to be reminded that while our tools advance with breathtaking speed, our capacity for self-delusion and avarice remains stubbornly, tragically human. So what does this mean for the future of digital ownership? The promise of blockchain technology to verify ownership, to empower creators, and to build community around shared assets remains profoundly powerful and is not inherently corrupt. The scandals we've chronicled are not a failure of the technology itself, but a failure of the people and systems built upon it. The path forward is not to abandon the idea of digital assets, but to demand better. It requires a cultural shift from speculative gambling to genuine value creation, from blind trust in anonymous founders to rigorous verification and accountability. It means building legal frameworks that can protect investors without stifling innovation, and developing new social norms where transparency is rewarded and deception is ruthlessly exposed. The future of this space belongs not to the hype artists and the rug pullers, but to the patient builders, the authentic artists, and the communities that prioritize trust and utility over fleeting profits. The Wild West era is closing. The next chapter will be written by those who learned the hardest lessons of this one, understanding that true value isn't minted in a moment. It's built over time, with integrity, and held in trust for everyone who believes in the promise of a better digital world.